Ask not what we all be can do for you. Ask what you can do for we all be.
Well, Dr. Let me interrupt. I finally got Dr. E. Faye Williams to come on. This is the president of the National Congress of Black Women. As Honor held the sister on. She's a brilliant sister. In the words of that other Washingtonian, Duke Ellington, truly beyond category. I can't really begin to introduce her, but she's just phenomenal. And Dr. Faye Williams, are you there? Dr. E. Faye Williams, Esquire, are you there?
Oh, I am blessed and highly favored, and thank you for all of that.
I mean, it's an honor. I don't know how to really properly introduce you correctly, but I'm sorry you were just getting into it. So this is Dr. Jahi Issa, who's a very brilliant man, a brilliant scholar, researcher, a true civil rights activist, human rights activist. And we had our first segment of the show, we're dealing with this hanging case. I don't know if you ever heard of it, Dr. Williams, Frederick Jermaine Carter. This young black man was found hanging back in Mississippi on December 3rd, 2010.
Yes,
Well, I got his aunt on the phone. She was the first part of the show, Sister Shalea Ross. Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Hello, my sister. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Blessed and highly favored.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to share this moment on Brother Herb's station. And I have heard about you, so nothing but good things.
Well, I was going to say only the good stuff was true anyway. You see, I'm a D. Gregory disciple, so there's only good that one could find about me.
Oh, definitely. And so we're going to touch upon the case and before the end of the hour of this hour, but I just want to talk about some of those things you do as well. This is also Women's History Month, and I couldn't think of any better person to close it out with than you, Dr. Faye Williams. Dr. E. Faye Williams, excuse me.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, it is Women's History Month, and of course you know that black women are still fighting to be a part of this month because so often our history is left out and we don't get all of the positive things said about us that are said about other women. But in this month, we always like to remember those women who were fighting for our rights long before any of us were born, like Sojourner Truth. And by the way, we are the organization that brought truth to the Capitol. That is Sojourner Truth. We worked for years to put the statue of the first black woman ever in the United States Capitol. And she's not the only one who deserves to be there, but we had to start somewhere. There are many others we hope to have there because one of our projects is about imaging of black women. As you know, so often in the media, Ron, we are negatively portrayed when black women have done so much to advance this country. There was Harriet Tubman, who led the Underground Railroad, who took so many people out of slavery, worked even in the military because she was so good at tracking and getting people through danger that the military wanted her to work for them. There again, she had to fight for her right to do that. And, of course, she was not paid as she should have been paid when other people who had far less intelligence on how to, go across the country in the dark and not be detected by the enemy. So we're still at the end of the totem pole when it comes to being fairly paid. But fortunately, we have a president who is working toward that. And one of the first things that he did when he got to the White House was to start a council on women and girls. Now, we don't have a Sisters Keeper program yet, but then that's left up to those of us who are black women to do that, such as our organization. We do honor our sisters every year, and this year it's September 28th here in Washington, D.C., the Sunday morning following the Congressional Black Caucus, because we know that so many people have put so much into who we are today. And so we honor them. But you know what? We don't forget the brothers. We also have a segment called The Good Brother, and we honor good brothers on that same day that we're honoring sisters. But in this month, I like to especially remember Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, who suffered so much, who did so much, but was a very brave soul who took all kinds of risks for us. And we don't often teach our young people their history. Sometimes we don't teach them about people like Ella Baker, who really led young people's efforts in SNCC and CORE and worked the SCLC and helped to organize these organizations so that our people could come out of slavery and could know human rights. We sometimes don't talk about Rosa Parks. Now, she does have a statue in the Capitol, finally, But you remember she sat down so that all of us could stand up and be somebody. And she didn't just do that. None of these women did this for themselves. They just didn't do it for us to get something for ourselves, but for the common good, for our people. And I think we've lost a little bit of that. These women suffered so that we could have the rights that we have today. And one of the things we must not forget is that the civil rights movement is not over. It continues. We've constantly got to struggle not only to gain new rights, but to try to retrieve and get some of the rights back that these wonderful women fought for years ago.
All right, just touch bases. I mean, you just opened up a Pandora's box. You're such a brilliant, I could tell you a great lecturer and motivational speaker just by hearing your voice and the enthusiasm and the energy and the vibrations I'm picking up.
Well, thank you.
It's an honor, but I want to ask you this, though. I think it's very fascinating because as soon as I'm thinking in my head, you know, you talking about, you know, black women and, you know, how we came. I mean, I'm paraphrasing how we, you know, came so far but still got so far to go. I'm thinking about, you know, us not knowing our history and our true heroes and revolutionaries. I'm thinking about the fact that Russell Simmons felt comfortable in portraying Harriet Tubman the way he did this past summer. Well, I look at some of the reality TV shows, like The Real Housewives of Atlanta, The Basketball Wives. How has this, you know, what is your take on all this? Like, first, the Russell Simmons thing, and also so many black women, how they're portrayed on TV today in the media, in the popular media.
That's why, Ron, we black women have to continue to work on our image to show the world that there is another side of us. Sure, I mean, some of us do some wrong things, but I think Russell Simmons was totally disrespectful not only to Harriet Tubman, but to all black women. But when you look at his history and who he associates himself with, then you can understand why he feels free to give negative images of black women. And unfortunately, that happens with too many of our men. I have no problem with interracial dating, interracial marriage, what have you. But do you have to denigrate black women? After all, for most of these young men, I can say their mothers were African American, their fathers were African American. So why is it that you denigrate your own mother, your own sister, your own grandmother? That's what I find abominable, and that's something we have to continue to work on our young people who do gangster rapping and other things which denigrate black women. Now, some people say, oh, well, they're just living their reality. That may well be true, but when you wake up in the morning, your breath smells bad, but you try to clean it up, don't you?
Yes,
you don't just, you know, take the time to continue to wallow in the mud or the dirt or the, you know, whatever that you may have grown into. That part was not your fault. But what you do from that point on, after you're born, after you're growing up, that is your fault. That is your responsibility. So we have to continue to love our young people no matter what they're doing. We have to show them the way. And I think that's where a lot of us fail, is that we don't take enough time to mentor our young people. After they get in trouble, you know, we want then to try to figure out what we can do. But we need to mentor them while they're still very young. And that reminds me of a program we have in the National Congress of Black Women called College for Kids. We take young 9 to 12-year-old children on a college campus. And it's simply because some kids may never go to college. They may never have been to a college, but right now we have a program going on at Howard University and other places across the country where we take those babies on the campus on a Saturday. We spend the day with them, and these are all volunteer women in our organization that I'm talking about. We spend the day with them. We teach them all the wonderful things they can be when they grow up. We bring in bankers and doctors and lawyers and diplomats and, you know, things they may not be familiar with. We take them to museums because we want them to get those experiences before they are adults so that they know what they're all about. They know things that maybe the other young people in their communities don't know. And sometimes we have a hard time getting parents to understand the importance of these children, you know, experiencing these positive things and having positive role models as they grow up. We mentor. Last week I spoke at George Washington University. I had some of the young women I had mentored from years ago come because they heard that I was going to be speaking there. Every summer we take as many young people as want to come and volunteer in our organization. Sometimes we get to take them to the White House. Sometimes we get to take them to museums. We get to take them to various conferences. But I try to teach them something useful that's going to be of benefit to them and understand the importance of education. I know my mother reared 9 children, but she always taught us, she said, baby, I can't be with you all the time, but all I can do is teach you what you need to know to survive, but you got to live your own life and die your own death. And she would say, if you get your education in your head, as, the old folks talk, you will never be without an opportunity to make a living, not only for yourself, because if we get a good education and all we do is help ourselves, then we're a traitor to our people. We've got to learn to mentor and to help our young people grow up to be what they want to be and teach them what they can be. Help them with their self-esteem.
I agree with everything you said. I co-sign everything you said, Sister Dr. Williams. I was just thinking to myself, though, to me, like, you're an amazing product of the community, of the beloved community, in a sense. I mean, I don't know too many women or people, period, that have these type of iconic figures, historical figures, mentors. I mean, like, you're the third president of the National Congress of Black Women, and the people that preceded you, see Dolores Tucker and Shirley Chisholm. Exactly. I mean, you actually had a relationship with Dr. Dorothy Height. Exactly. I mean, how many of these women got access? How many young girls got access to these type of women? Started with your mom, this phenomenal woman, it seems.
Yeah. Dr. Height was my neighbor, and I met her when I was about 17 years old at a Delta Sigma Theta convention. And from that day until the day she died, she knew my name. Anytime she walked up to me, anytime I called her and wanted advice, she was willing to sit down with me and give me the advice. And one of the things I'll never forget that she told me is that when you're having a difficult time with people you're working with, and you're in charge, like you're the president or you're in charge of that group, give them something to do. And that settles them down generally. They don't have all this time to be critical of what you're doing because now you've given them a job to do. They've got a reason to work hard to succeed and do what needs to be done in the community. And again, Mr. Gregory tells us we don't really have a community as such because in a community we own our own schools, we run the police force, we run the city council, we run all of these things that, in fact, we live in the hood, and that's where we're always trying to hide from one another. When we talk about the hood, we don't have a community. And until we're able to control the things, and part of controlling it is meaning that we get up and we go out to vote. Right here in Washington, D.C., we have an election on Tuesday. And sometimes, I'll tell you, Ron, it is embarrassing the day after the election when some of the candidates that people say they wanted have lost because only 15, 20, no more than 30% of our people have gone out to vote. We have to learn that elections are important, not just the presidential election, but a lot of the things that's happening to our people now are happening at the local level, the county level, the parish level, because I'm from Louisiana, and the state level. We can't forget those elections. They have a lot more to do with our lives often than the federal elections do.
Oh, wow. You're speaking so many truths right now, and I also want to ask you this as well. I think it's very interesting reading your bio. You're such an accomplished person, like a true Renaissance woman, if there ever was one. I want to ask you, like, how were you able to require the exclusive rights to George Washington Carver's inventions, some of his inventions, I believe?
Well, believe it or not, I was one of the few women who spoke for the Million Man March in 1995.
Oh, wow.
I was, as a matter of fact, the co-chairman of that march. I traveled. I helped to get people to come to Washington, helped to organize, and as a result, I was allowed to speak at the march. I was one of the few women who spoke at that march. And I met a young man who didn't have a place to stay. I allowed him to come into my home and to stay here. And he started doing radio once he was here. And as he was doing radio, he had a gentleman on who knew about the Carver rubbing oil, the George Washington Carver rubbing oil. And he brought it home, and I remember his being very sick one night, having just a really bad, almost pneumonia, like he could hardly talk. All of his muscles, his body was aching. He used some of that rubbing oil. And the next morning, he was up and out before I woke up. And that was amazing to me. And so I started to inquire about it and ultimately met Dr. Austin Curtis through this young man. Dr. Curtis is the person who actually worked with Dr. George Washington Carver. And I gained the rights to distribute, the exclusive rights to distribute the product. Then my business partner, whose name was Reverend Benny Thayer, bought the rights from Dr. Austin Curtis, because Dr. Curtis was getting old at that time, and he, couldn't really handle the company. So he sold it to my business partner, who purchased it because he knew of my interest in it. And then, of course, as soon as he purchased it, he turned it over to me. He sold it to me. And I've had the rights, since 1999, I believe, to all of Dr. Carver's formulas. We've made the rubbing oil. We've made the hair products, all natural hair products. And this rubbing oil, there are some of our people who almost can't live without that oil. They said it's the only thing that has helped them with their arthritis, with their rheumatism, with menstrual cramps, with just all kinds of ailments. I mean, there are some elderly people who've been using this oil since Dr. Carver was living, and they're continuing to use it. And sometimes you should just hear that sigh of happiness when they find that it's still available. So I'm working with a new brother now who is trying to help me get it more widely distributed, so you'll be hearing more about that soon. But we feel that we have a responsibility to carry on the work of our ancestors, like Dr. George Washington Carver. And so we're working now to make sure that more and more people know about it.
That's amazing, like you saying all that. I mean, is it available to purchase right now? Can I go online and get some
well,
oil?
It's not online right now, but people can call the same number that you just called, the 202-554-0159, 202-554-0159, Monday through Thursday. There will be someone there to answer any of their questions about the product. But Dr. Carver, as you know, had many of his formulas for things taken from him and used by large corporations, and he never really benefited from it. But he held on to this rubbing oil because he said he wanted that to be used to empower the African-American community. So I have felt a special honor and a special obligation to make sure this rubbing oil gets out to as many of our people as possible. There are things that it's good for that, fibromyalgia, many of the things that people just don't think about. You can take, this oil is so powerful. If you had a toothache, you could just massage it on your jaw, and it takes away that. And we have, we have statements from people about all of these things that it's helped them with when they have found nothing else to help them. But then I have a special honor owning the formulas to see to it that they're used correctly. Some people use the oil, they buy it in bulk and sell it to their neighbors, their friends, and earn money doing it. We work out all kinds of agreements with people to do that because Dr. Carver was a scientific genius, and we never want his work to die.
You know what's amazing about you? I'm going to tell you what's amazing about you. The fact that as educated, as accomplished as you are, you would take in a quote-unquote what people consider like a nobody or a stranger. I mean, like I live in Memphis. You in D.C., I live in Memphis. I don't know if I could do something like that. You understand? Mm-hmm. What made you want to take this young man? Because it led to this blessing with you in acquiring the property, intellectual property of George Washington Carver. So what made you, like, how did you, what was about this young man that you saw that other people couldn't see?
It was seeing how, and this young man, by the way, is a businessman in his own right today after he showed me by example how well that rubbing oil worked. He's a business person in his own right, is married now, has his own family. But just as he showed me that and how well it worked, I think I have the responsibility to show many other people that. But I love having young people around me, and I try to give them experiences that are helpful to them, that are going to help them to grow. Because when I was growing up, country girl down in Louisiana, we lived on a farm. Yeah, we had to pick cotton. We dug potatoes. We did all of pick beans. But the point is, we always had fresh food. We were always healthy. And none of us got sick, or if we did, all we had to do is have my mom give us her little magic potion of something. But, we really didn't go to doctors in those days. Our mother was our doctor, but she tried to keep us healthy. My mother reared her 9 children without the benefit of my father being in the home after I was 10 years old. And, her children were just kind of stair-steps. She had little, I'm next to the top. So my dad leaves at when I'm 10. That means all the little ones are there coming on behind us. And my mother taught us that we had a responsibility for our young brothers and our sisters. We always had to look after them, to take care of them. And so that whole concept just stayed with me as I grew up. I had uncles who looked out for me, who helped me, even though my father wasn't at home. You know, and many young people say, well, I don't have a father at home. Many of us don't have fathers at home. But what you should do is find another male or female mentor, whichever one it is you think you're missing, and be willing to take that person's teaching. You know, sometimes we have young people who don't want to be told anything, but let me tell you, it is to their disadvantage. When you're willing to shadow someone, to walk with someone, and to, be with them, help them with what they're doing, that allows them to teach you how to help other people, and it continues to grow from there. But everybody, every one of us who had any kind of education, any kind of positive experience, should share that with our young friends, our young cousins, our young brothers and sisters. And that's how we as a people can progress, to share what we know and what we have with others. Years ago, that's what neighbors did, and we need to go back to doing that. We got away from it when we were able to desegregate, because we never did really integrate, but desegregate. Right. We lost a lot of our community spirit, and we need to get back to it. And we try to continue that in the National Congress of Black Women. We are a group of women who are a sisterhood. Generally, we love one another. We help one another. Anything to do with a black woman and her family, we find it our obligation to work on that. Right now, we're working on the Marissa Alexander case in Florida. I'll be going there for the trial. I work on that, from time to time. Our chapter there has helped to rewrite the laws that got her those 20 years initially, and now, of course, the state's attorney is trying to give her 20 years for each offense, which would be 60 years. We'll be there when that trial reopens in July. We've worked with the White House on signing up people. This weekend, we have members who are working with the Deltas and the Omegas, trying to get people signed up at the last minute for affordable health care. We're working on the issue of child slave labor. I don't know how many of your listeners know that the chocolate industry is it is horrible in terms of using children as young as 7 to get those beans and gather them, and they don't get paid. Often they're trafficked from their countries. They're stolen from their parents, and sometimes the parents send them thinking that the children are going to earn money, are going to work. But that's too young for children to work. It's against international law for young children to have to work. But one of the countries that's most famous for doing that, or infamous, I should say, is Ivory Coast. And we're working now to try to end that child slave labor. These children need to be going to school. They need to get a good education so that they can do more than just pick beans. These children are in danger. Those pesticides are getting in their young system. They're carrying these heavy bean bags, that can injure their bodies, their backs especially. And they're not getting an education because they're working on these farms as slaves, as a matter of fact, and they're just children. So we're working on that issue. We talked about it at Valentine's Day, so that we could get people to consider before they buy chocolate what they're promoting with these children being slaves in their countries to do this. We're going to do another one at Easter because, a lot of people love to buy those chocolate Easter bunnies, but we need to understand where it's coming from and how our children are suffering across the world, and particularly in West Africa, by being treated as slaves. We have a wonderful committee on the culture of disability. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have a petition soon that's going around for the Easter part of that chocolate, so I'll be sure to send that to you.
Yeah,
and hopefully you can share it with your listeners. We do voter education and registration because while so many of us voted in the presidential election, we haven't quite gotten it together in these off-year elections like this year. But we need to understand it's important to vote every time. Even if it's a dog catching, it means something in our community is related to that, and it's something that relates to us. We work on every key civil and human rights issue that we can, black women's health, voting, our images of black women, jobs, whatever. If it's an issue, we're there. but we want more of our people across the country. And you don't have to even be in an organization to mentor a child. Just take one. If each one of us took one child and just took that child maybe on a Sunday, took that child and sat him or her down on a weekend to help them study. I mean, mentoring is the easiest thing we can do. We can even mentor on the telephone to young people. That's an easy one. So I hope all your listeners will, from this day on, plan to take at least one child that they're going to look after. It can be male or female. Even though the president has put out the My Brother's Keeper, we got to be our sisters and our brother's keeper, and black women have the reputation for doing that. We've always cared about not only our children, but our sisters' children, and that's what mentoring is.
Definitely, and I also want people to know, like you told me about this documentary. Everybody needs to see this documentary. It's called The Dark Side of Chocolate, which is available online, and it's so damning and so powerful. Like what you're saying. People think, like, when you look at the movie 12 Years a Slave, I'm glad that stuff is over. But like you said, slavery is more alive than ever now, all over the place. And you look at even the private prison complex here in America. But like, that documentary is so powerful because it shows you, because you got folks that have profited, like Nestle, Mars, Hershey. Everybody that makes chocolate has profited off of exploiting these children, our children, black kids.
Right. And recently, CNN, I don't know how many of your listeners saw that CNN went back and looked at whether or not any progress is being made toward ending child slavery. And it's not just child slavery, it's just that that's the one we're concentrating on, but some of them are adults. And they went back and looked at it to see if any progress is made, and it's astounding. The answer is basically no. And, you know, we know Nestle is in Switzerland, but Mars is a U.S. company. And of all the countries, we should be abiding by child slave labor laws and the international laws on that. But we're not doing it enough. You know, we just sometimes decide, I've got to have this chocolate bar, I've got to have, you know, some Nestle's, or I've got to have Mars, or whatever all those others are that have chocolate in them, without understanding how those came to be. We can be the generation to stand up for those 27 million men and women and children who are trapped in slavery around the world. And sometimes it's in brothels, sometimes it's in factories. It can be in all kinds of places, on the street corners here in America, in many of our cities. So there is something all of us can do to make a difference in this world. And I certainly hope that your listeners will watch that film that you talked about, and you know, maybe go back and try to find that CNN report. Just Google the words child slave labor and chocolate, and I'm sure lots of information will come up that your listeners can see how bad this this problem is and what they can do about it. So we'll be sending you, as I said, that petition and some other information on easy things that people can do.
Yeah, I mean, Jessica, this is so serious. This is a serious problem because you had a French Canadian journalist who basically was disappeared for investigating the paper trail in the child slavery as it relates to the chocolate industry. So this is big business right here. And the thing about it, it makes me wonder, can capitalism as we know it today exist without this type of exploitation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it makes you wonder.
We're just trying to shine a light on what is a big problem that all of us, even here in the United States, can do to help these children. The children were sat down and talked to about what did they want. These are 7, 8, 9-year-old children who've been taken away from their homes. Many of them are just babies. You see them crying because, you know, they're missing their families. They don't know how to get back home. They come from Togo. They come from Benin. They come, you know, from all kinds of countries. They're taken away from their habitat, from their families, and made into slaves. And you know what? They aren't even getting paid. They aren't even getting paid while the chocolate factories are making billions of dollars on this child slave labor, and we've got to put an end to it.
I definitely agree with that. Somebody raised a question in the chat room I think is very interesting from Math History. That's his ID, this person is. He said, should we still try to get about 70% of high school students to go to college, or only let the qualified go, which is about 20%?
Well, I think we have to have better counseling in our schools so that we counsel young people into the right direction. All of them may not be capable of going to college, maybe all of them don't even want to go. Many of them out of high school are ready to go into some kind of technical training, and I see nothing wrong with that. I think we made a mistake when we started belittling technical training. I had an uncle who was a plumber, made far more money than I made as a teacher. So, sometimes we get caught up in, this bourgeois stuff about you've got to have a degree or what have you. It's nice if you can have a degree. I've got a whole bunch of them. I got 3 doctorates. I got a law degree, a master's degree, a bachelor's degree. But I know people who have far less education who never went to college, who earn a lot of money, but money can't be the only thing that we look for. We have to look out in terms of how we can help our community, how we can help our children. And if going to a technical school and learning a skill is the way that we choose to do it, no, I'm not going to put a percent on how many should go to college. Obviously, I like to see young people going to college who want to go and, who have the talent, who have the grades. But I think we have to go back to our schools and make sure they're getting the best education they can get, whether they're going on to college or not. But realize all of them will not go to college.
Well, let me ask you this. I want to get your take on this. I got somebody who's on the line as well. What is the future of HBCUs as we know them? It's like they have a lot of fiscal problems. So you talked about George Washington Carver earlier. Mm-hmm. And I always said to myself, if Tuskegee had access to George Washington Carver's intellectual property, all the patents and stuff like that, they would have way more money than any Ivy League school in the country combined.
Well, absolutely. Not only Dr. George Washington Carver's products, but there was a woman by the name of Henrietta Lacks, who's
yes,
that story from John.
Well, tell us about it. Yeah, the former.
And of course, her organs were taken from her, and they were done in a study at Tuskegee and other places, just like, syphilis and all those things were. And yet Tuskegee didn't hold on to them, didn't get any money for it or no continuing funds. At any rate, Henrietta Lacks is, Lacks, I'm sure most doctors would know who she was because she had these very unique organs. And they still live, and they help with research and to find things that heal and help our people.
Yep,
and
the DNA, right?
Polio. I mean, just think we need to know that. And until a few years ago, with all of the degrees I have, I'd never learned that. But I read a book about it, and I've continued to read, and now I'm finding that young medical students know about it. But all our people, when we start thinking that we see these negative images of our women, we need to be able to proudly say, do you know how all people have benefited from the organs of Henrietta Lacks? Do we know? And, be able to just give them a whole list of people who have done and are doing things to help not just black women and their families, but all of the world. So we've got to study, though. We've got to learn our history in order for us to be able to argue our cases.
Yeah, I know Henrietta Lacks is interesting because it was a woman named Rebecca Skloot, who was a professor at the University of Memphis, that actually wrote that book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, I believe.
Exactly.
And John Hopkins, they took advantage. I mean, she had ovarian cancer, but they didn't get her consent to take her organs and DNA to do what they did, which, fund a multi-billion-dollar industry. But what troubles me, Sister Dr. Williams, is the fact that her family, her immediate family, a lot of them are living destitute or have no access to health care.
Exactly. They have not benefited from it. When I read the book that you're talking about by Professor Skloot, I learned a lot about Henrietta's family. As a matter of fact, we honored her posthumously, and just the week before I was to meet her daughter, Deborah, she died.
Oh, wow.
Her daughter and her brother did come to our event, and we were able to tell many people about this miraculous, health thing about Henrietta Lacks, so that they know who she is. Now, I talk with many young people, and they have read the book, and I would suggest they read it. Or they don't have to read the book. They can go to the website. It's one of the things about the website now, and get lots of information about her. But for years, who talked about her? Who knew that this was a black woman? Who knew how much help she had been to all people? And I emphasize that. It's just like we started out talking about the women's movement. When Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Fannie Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks, Ella Baker, Ida B. Wells Barnett, all of the things these women did wasn't just for black women. the civil rights movement was not just for black people. As a matter of fact, many women, since we're talking about women's history, have benefited far more than black women have benefited. So we have to remind people of these things. If we don't know our history, we can't tell it to other people.
Well, let me ask you, Dr. Williams, you are in definitely a position to answer this question. What is your take on feminism? Has it hurt or hindered the black movement in general? I mean, like, I know I talk to women, they say black men are oppressing them. They feel like black men are oppressing them and are keeping them from getting ahead. And I just want to get your take on it. Like, do you feel like feminism has a place in the black movement?
I have to go back to our mutual friend, Dick Gregory, who said, people will do to you whatever you allow them to do. I don't know of any black men who are oppressing me. One of the things I have always understood is that feminism means different things to different people. Not long ago, a writer took it upon herself to call the First Lady of the United States a feminist nightmare. I obviously and hurriedly responded to that. Feminism means something different to many black women, or most black women, than it does to white women or other women, because our challenges are different. I was speaking at George Washington University with Professor Paula Giddings the other day, and a similar question was asked of our panel. And, I simply said, I'd love to be able to go to every Planned Parenthood meeting, every feminist organization's, meeting, like National Organization for Women or Feminist Majority, all of these. But I have a second challenge that I have to deal with, and it's just as important to me as a woman. Race is also important to me, and I have to deal with both. So I can't spend all of my time in the feminist movement, although I do consider myself a feminist, but I allow myself to define what feminism is to me. And if you look back at all the things that black women have done in our community, oh, yes, we have been feminists. It just simply meant that we knew we had the power to do certain things, and we did it. And then when you have, Gloria Steinem making the thing about the president, if he had been, a black woman as opposed to a black male, born to a single mother, etc., would he have gotten to be president on the credentials he had? I remember black women being very, very angry with Steinem, even though I know Steinem has done a lot for the women's movement. I think that we have to remind our friends like Steinem and others that if they truly want us to be involved and spend more time in the feminist movement, then they have to be involved in our community and eliminating some of the problems and challenges we have always had to face. Women benefited, white women, I should say, benefited far more from the civil rights movement than we have. Just look at the businesses. Black women have businesses, but we don't make the kind of dollar that white women make. So if they truly want us to be involved in the feminist movement, then there are some things that they need to consider helping us with in our own communities that may or may not have anything to do with feminism. We have to be concerned, not one-issue people. We have to learn to be concerned about immigration reform, about jobs for poor people. We have to be concerned about everything in our community, not just about, whether it's abortion. That is not the only issue that black women have to deal with. We've got some other serious issues we have to spend our time on, too. So don't expect us to respond every time it's about an issue like reproductive rights.
Yeah, well, actually, look, I want to skip the issue about HBCUs because you are a product of Grambling, and they might not even have a football team.
And Howard.
And Howard, I'm just saying, but I'm saying, like, a lot of our greatest leaders and innovators came out the HBCUs, whether they taught there or went there. But I want to get your take, like, what can we do to save HBCUs? Are they in threat of being extinct?
Well, at one time I was president, I should say, of the Grambling Alumni Association. I think I probably spent the longest time being a president of an alumni association there. And one of the things I started as president was to have our people who graduated giving back to the school. As you know, Grambling has lots of athletes out there who make millions of dollars. So we started, not just them, but graduates, period, giving back to the school. I think we haven't done enough of that. sometimes we think that if a school is a public school, that it's going to give everything that young people need to make succeed. We are finding now that nobody cares more about our schools than we do. We're finding legislatures, just like the Congress, are cutting back on everything that they can. So if we pick up the ball and we give back to the school until the state is ready to educate its children, then we will see that we can keep some of our young people at those schools, because that's one of the other problems. Many of us graduated from these schools but send our children off to somebody else's school that's benefiting and getting the money. We afford, what it takes to send them to Harvard and to Yale and to Duke and to LSU and all these other schools, but we don't give a dime to our historically black colleges. And that's a real tragedy. I think that's what the big problem is right now. We need to begin to give back to those schools. We have enough of everything that those schools need when the state isn't, picking up its job. At the same time, we need to be fighting for the state to live up to what it should be for young black students. But what they're trying to do really is close down those schools, and that will benefit, of course, other race schools once we don't have these black schools.
I want to ask you a question. I always want to read out to people. People understand what type of person I'm talking to right now. You're a true intellectual. I just want to read out your impressive this college resume. You got a Bachelor of Science from Grambling University. You got your Juris Doctorate from D. Howard University School of Law. You got your Doctorate of Ministry from Wesley Theological. You got your Ph.D. from City University of Los Angeles. You got your Master's of Public Administration, Ministry and Law.
But I'm still studying, though.
I feel wow. I mean, you're a student of life, but
yes,
UCLA.
Well, we never know enough. As a matter of fact, the more degrees you get, the more you understand what you don't know. If I'd probably just had a bachelor's degree, I wouldn't know about all the other things that I didn't know. It would have just passed me by. But each time I get another degree or I get another credential, and I'm studying property investment right now.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what I'll study next. But I remind our young people that there is so much out there that we don't know. And you don't have to be in a formal class. You don't even have to be in college to study. I mean, that's what we have books for. That's what we have, the Internet for. That's what we have mentors for, so that we can learn from them. You can learn on-the-job training.
Well, let me ask you this: is it possible? And you guys have an active intellectual and also social life. Is it possible? And you accomplished so much in your lifetime. Is it possible to raise a family under those type of conditions? Is it possible to have a career like you have and still have a family? Well,
I have family. I have lots of family. I don't personally have children, but my mother says, when you look at all the young people who are around me all the time, she says, oh, you have children. So they don't whether it's nieces and nephews, like, for instance, last summer, and this summer again, I have nieces and nephews who are going to come and spend the summer with me. I'm enrolling them in STEM classes, science, technology, engineering, and math classes. I'm giving them experiences that they might not otherwise have had. So maybe they aren't my children by birth, but I feel the responsibility to be responsible for them, and not just my relatives, but other young people. I have a young woman who so wanted to work with me that she spent her Christmas holidays working with me. I mean, I wasn't even planning to work over Christmas vacation, but because she wanted to have that experience, I came in and I worked with her. And you know what she did? She went back to her college. I'd never heard of her college before. It's called Susquehanna College. She now has a thriving, wonderful chapter going at that university, and those young black women had never before had anything that they could relate to on that campus, but now they're just as happy and proud of the fact they now have their own organization. Their student government just approved it a couple of weeks ago.
You are very accomplished and credentialed and very educated and got the degrees to show it. Are men intimidated by you? You found black men to be intimidated by you? You got a nice person. You got a great personality. And you're a beautiful sister inside and out. But I just want to know, are black men intimidated by you? Do you feel that?
Well, first of all, let me just say that college, and I'm sure the young women don't mind, was Susquehanna College in Pennsylvania. So that's a note for our encouragement, I hope, for other young people who may be listening to your show to know that we'll help them organize their universities or college campuses to have an organization such as ours. Now, in terms of intimidating, no, I don't think so. I mean, there are sometimes you run into someone who maybe just a little bit, but I try to make people comfortable in working with me. As I said, when I say I was the chair of the Million Man March, most people say, you mean the Million Women's March? I said, no, the Million Man March, because
Wow.
I think the brothers felt comfortable enough with me to have me as their leader, and I did my best with no effort to intimidate them. And why would you intimidate someone if you want to get their help in doing a job? So I'm very pleased with the relationship I have working with males. I can either be the leader or I can be the follower, and I think that's what helps me. I work hard, but I also work smart, and I love my brothers, and I don't beat up on them in the press. I don't talk bad about them. I realize it takes both black men and women to help to make our community, take it from being a hood to a community, as I said earlier.
That's right. So I want to just wrap it up. I'm just honored to have you on the show. It's really made my day. But I just want to make sure I touch in with Sister Shalea Ross.
Okay.
Sister Ross, you there?
Well, thank you for having me, and I need to jump off here if I can.
Oh, you could definitely. Okay, I just want to you give a quick advice to her about what she should do in terms from a legal point of view to help push this case forward, like with her nephew. But what advice can you give her right quick, if you don't mind?
Okay, well, is she a relative or what?
She's the aunt, and
she's the aunt. I would think that she should call me on my office number is 202-678-6788, 202-678-6788. But I would say the number one thing is not to give up, not to think that nobody will help you. It may be that I can only give you advice of someone else who can help you even more than I can, but I'll be happy to discuss the case with her.
Okay,
so, sister, do call me, and we can talk about it. Give me a little more detail, and I thank you and appreciate you for being concerned about cases like that, because some people just decide it's not going to do any good, therefore they don't even try to do anything about it.
But Dr. Faye Williams, we love you so much. We love you madly, in the words of Great Duke Ellington. We're going to have you back on the show many times over, trust me. I really enjoyed this conversation. But we go to efayewilliams.com, right? efayewilliams.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's your website.
That's my personal site. But then the organization is National Congress BW for Black Women. NationalCongressBW.org is the organization's website. But mine, you're correct, is E. Faye Williams, and that's Faye with an E, E-F-A-Y-E, Williams @gmail.com is my email. And then the site is just efayewilliams.com.
So I'll definitely be posting it around and, get into my network. So thank you so much, Dr. Williams. You take care of yourself, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Ron.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that does it for today's show. We'll be back on in a very near future, and we thank you for listening, and we'll have this available in our archives at blogtalkradio.com/WeAllBe. I want to thank everybody, Sister Shalea Ross, Dr. Jahi Issa, Brother Everett, for answering questions and for being such great people and committed to the struggle, a true righteous struggle. And we'll have Sister Shalea Ross back on, as well as Dr. Jahi Issa and Brother Everett. Y'all more than welcome to call back on to the show anytime. And that does it for today. Take care, everybody. Have a blessed one.